Got just about everybody on the call that needs to be on there. Coach, if you'd like to get us started with your thoughts on today's practice and how everything's gone this summer.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a really, you know, great day for us. It's kind of marks a little bit of a step forward towards what we hope to be a fun season. Some normalcy, having to be able to get back into a little bit of a routine, being around the guys more consistently. I've really enjoyed these guys. It's been a little bit different than years past uh, in many ways, but um, it seems as if they've really embraced the challenges that we're going to face in all ways. And I'm excited about the opportunity to get out there in about an hour and get to work.
And go ahead and raise your hand if you guys have any questions. We'll first go over to Jacob Unruh, the Oklahoman.
Mike, you mentioned the excitement going into the season. Today, you're going to be mic'd up. What can we kind of expect from you with the microphone? We've seen you practice, but the fans haven't.
I mean, I don't anticipate being much different, to be honest, Jacob. I'm gonna coach and try to make our guys better. And if I am aware we don't have a delay, so I got to be a little conscious of language. We don't have a bleep button, but I think I'm okay there. I got a few buddies of mine that I wouldn't recommend having a live practice with a microphone. I'm going to be pretty far down on that list of being concerned about it. But it's a great opportunity, obviously, for our fans, for our kids to be able to see about the people who haven't really seen these guys. There's been a lot of talk about them, but haven't had an opportunity to see them, to see kind of some of the development of what was our freshman class last year to this year, the improvement in Ice's ability to be a leader. And then obviously all the excitement is surrounding the new guys, who many of them, have only seen highlights of and haven't seen them work. And, for me, it'll be practice as usual, but it's great for our fans. And I think we'll have 15 to 20 NBA scouts watching as well. So another opportunity for exposure for these guys. And that's obviously part of what we're supposed to do is put these kids in position to have success as they move forward in their careers.
You mentioned Ice's leadership. How has he handled his role a little bit now with 2 point guards, with Cade being here too?
Again, I've always contended that sometimes it's made too much of a big deal, specifically the way the game is played nowadays. I've always wanted to have 3 really good point guards that I could count on and believe that could go out and make plays and put our team in position to have success. And we have that now. So he's been fine about it. I think the thing that I've noticed most different about Ice this year is he's deferred for 2 years, rightfully so, to guys who were already leaders. He's always had leadership qualities, but he suppressed it, out of respect for Cam and Thomas and Lindy, Trey Reeves, guys who have been around. And now you can see as he looks around, he knows, A, he doesn't have anybody to defer to, and B, he wants to embrace who his natural self is as a leader, vocally and by example.
I asked the Farron and Cade this earlier. The video that Courtney did that came out last night, how much of an asset is she and what she's doing for you guys right now with these videos?
There's really not a quantifier that I could put that would serve her well enough. And I'm not, obviously he's on the call, but between her and Stephen Howard, I feel like I've got the best communications team in the country. I mean, I'm sure there are some really good people out there, but they do an unbelievable job of making a really average coach look good, at least, and to, as much as possible, keep our program out in the forefront, keep us on the cutting edge of things from a recruiting standpoint, from a marketing standpoint. And it's really helped us. Obviously, we haven't had the success that we've hoped consistently, and not that masks anything, but it shows that we're still putting the pieces in place. So there are a lot of invaluable people in our program, and Courtney Bay is right at the top of the list.
Whose idea was it for the press conference, quote unquote press conference you had?
Yeah, I haven't had an original idea in my lifetime. So I really just go around doing what people tell me to do for the most part, whether it's wear a mask or do a press conference. So I just do what people tell me to do.
Gotcha. Awesome.
My wife would probably contend that that's not true.
Okay, yeah, that's probably true too. Also, thanks, Mike.
Frank Bonner, you are up.
Hey, Mike, good to see you again.
So, Frank,
You talked about this just a second ago about the fans, but how important is it or impactful is it for fans who usually see these guys only on game day, but today they'll get to see them, kind of see how the sausage is made a little bit and seeing them try to get better. What do you think that does for the fans being able to see them in that element versus just on regular game day?
well, today will be unique in the fact that we're not like preparing for a game. So a lot of it is just nuts and bolts, right? But there is an excitement level because they haven't seen these guys, most of them in a long time, some of them at all. Most of our fans have never seen Fair and Flavors or, Bryce Williams or Bernard Kuma. Like they haven't seen any highlights of them. They haven't seen anything about them. So there's a novelty there, for lack of a better word, of seeing guys for the first time. And I wish in some regards we could do this more often. I'm not sure I'm willing to commit to doing it every day. I don't want to give away all our secrets. But to give our fans some more perspective, like we do work on free throws. Like when we go 12 for 24 in a game, it's not because we don't practice it. It's just that that's the way it happens sometimes. And but it's a great day today because it's the first practice. The excitement's there, and like I said, I look forward to the next. I guess we got 42 days from today. We'll play our first game, and it's a nice little carrot out there for everybody right now.
And when we talked to Cade with the microphone, one of the questions asked was, will we hear him on the mic? And he said, yeah, you will hear me. I'm pretty vocal. How has it been to just see that part of him in practice and workouts?
It's been great. It's actually not his most natural thing. I think he's embraced that he needs to develop that skill a little bit more. It's an area of improvement for him to be more of a vocal guy. I tell guys all the time, the number one component of leadership in my mind is, do people follow you, right? You're not a leader because you're a senior. You're not a leader because someone names you captain or because you're older. You're a leader if people follow you. Now, you could be a bad leader. You could be a good leader. But if people follow you, you're leading. He's an example of, as talented as he is, people want to gravitate to him, want to follow him, and he's got to embrace that role in as positive of a manner as possible. And so I've encouraged him to take more ownership, even as a freshman, who we expect to make a lot of contributions to us because, obviously at the end of the day, there are going to be a lot of eyeballs on him, and his decision-making in regards to helping other guys have success is going to be a critical element to our team having success.
Appreciate you, Mike.
Chris Becker, you are up next.
Coach, how you doing?
Hey, Chris, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. With everything happening in sports as a whole in the NCAA, with cancellations and postponements, is that kind of overshadowing in your mind, the season and, with the possibility of not getting to play some games?
The virus is in control of everything right now. So, that's, no one's wanting to cancel games, right? So it's just a fact of life right now that we got to be ready to adjust and deal with. And, in my mind, I'm not sure that the most talented team will win the national championship this year. They could. I'm not saying that they wouldn't, because most of the time the teams with the most talent have the most success if they can put it all together. But I do think a critical element of this season will be teams' adaptability, right? If you get flustered because, you lose one player for a game, or you have to have a postponement, or for instance, we're going to bust up the Lincoln. That's not something we normally would do. If those are things that you get frustrated by, it's going to be a hard time enjoying this. And if you're not enjoying it, it's hard to have success. So I guess to answer your question, we don't really worry about it. We just deal with what's in front of us from a day-to-day standpoint.
Awesome. And then on a different note, can you kind of speak to how Chris Harris has come back from his injury with his ACL?
Yeah, Chris is probably a little bit ahead of schedule. I think structurally, from what the doctors tell me, because I only do what they tell us to do, it's as good as it's going to get from a structural standpoint. There's no lingering soreness. He gets a little fatigued quicker than he would otherwise. But he's coming along very nicely, and obviously he's a guy whose presence is going to be needed as somebody who played for us last year and has some pretty good experience from a just competitive standpoint.
Awesome. I appreciate your time, Coach.
Robert Allen, you are up next.
Okay. Yeah, we're on the road, Coach. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Judging by what you said about the microphone that you'll have today at practice, it sounds like you're going to play, the reality role of coach and not try and be master of ceremonies.
Yeah, I'm going to coach. I mean, I'm just going to coach like it's practice. I try to be authentically myself every day, regardless of whether there's a camera or microphone, and that served me okay to this point.
That leads me perfectly into my next question because Danielle kind of started the theme. I want to give her credit, but I asked both Theron and Cade about your role with them and how they look at you as a role model, not as a basketball coach, but as a father, husband, citizen, good man. And both of them talked pretty eloquently about that is something they look at you and they see, and it's been an inspiration or it's been an influence on them. Talk about how you embrace that role with your players.
That's a really good question. I think, a lot of times the competitive part of this business overshadows the true mission of what in my mind, at least what I'm here for, which is to do those things. On 27 times in the regular season maximum this year, we'll get to go out and throw a ball up in the air and play a game. If we get the postseason, which we're hopeful, we'll play, 4 or 5 more games. So, 30 some odd, maybe 35 games. But I've got a responsibility in their lives every day. And so I got 330 days some odd out there that I don't have to coach games, that they still need to see somebody that they can trust, that they can hopefully see as an example. I try to have my kids around as much as possible. I want them to see me show affection to my wife, tell her thank you, not be afraid of having the kids in the office and juggle. I'm no different than you. I mean, all of you, right? I mean, I'm just a normal person who just happens to have a job that people pay attention to. And so what I want them to understand is no matter how much success they have in life, it's still about how you treat people and how you comport yourself from a respect standpoint. And, at the end of the day, everything else goes away, right? My job has a shelf life. At some point, I'm not going to coach games anymore, but I'm still going to need to be a good person. So that's kind of the way I think about it.
Last thing, everybody wants to talk about what you're good at. What in the next 30 to 45 days do you need to get a lot better at with this team?
Oh, man, that list is much longer than the things we're good at right now. I can tell you that. Well, and a lot of it is we have a lot of youth and inexperience, a combination. So we don't really understand each other very well. That's going to be the most important thing is consistency in practice. These guys getting to know one another. Defensively, we have to understand the urgency that you have to play with. My freshmen right now, they'd rather score 95 points and give up 94. And, I'll take the win, right? But we got to understand, you got to get stops in this league in particular to have success. And so those are the things I'm focused on is just the chemistry and the defensive urgency for this first few days.
Thanks, Coach.
No problem. Thank you.
Joseph Fazio, go for it.
Coach, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
Good. I'm doing well. You talked a little bit about the freshmen that you have on this team, but could you talk a little bit more about the improvements you've seen from these second-year guys on your team?
Yeah, a lot of them, the game has changed just because they know that what worked in high school doesn't necessarily work in college. And that's the biggest challenge you have with freshmen in particular is they've had success doing things a certain way for a long time and don't quickly enough understand that strength and conditioning is important, resting is important, eating properly is important, coming to practice with intention on getting better every day is important. And so that's what I see now with guys like Avery and Chris and Keelan and Caleb, is that they understand that necessity of every day matters, right? Watching film is important, going into the weight room and embracing that soreness that you deal with for the first few weeks is okay, and not looking at it as punishment. So they've all made great improvement. And I think just the combination of their ability to help the younger guys, and then, like I said, that chemistry with them is going to be critically important to us, having a successful season.
I think last year, early in the days, you were talking about Keelan and Caleb, how you got them into the weight room more. You had your wife going in nutritional plans. Do you think they're at a point where you want them size-wise and weight-wise?
I mean, there's always room for improvement, right? But they've made great strides. There's still some room for improvement there for both of them from a strength standpoint. But I love their length. They've got great attitudes. They work hard. They're coachable. They're good teammates. And so I'm excited about their ability to help us this year, but certainly as they continue to get bigger and stronger, helping us even more.
All right. Thanks, Coach.
Garen Emick, you're up next.
Mike, I wouldn't mind 95, 94 for the record. Those are a lot more fun to write about,
I understand. Not if we lose them.
I'm not supposed to care whether you win or lose. I don't mind.
I'm speaking from my perspective. I'm not projecting that.
You don't want to. I know you're not. You just said you're not worried. Well, you said a bit ago you're not worried too much about the challenges. You're not supposed to be anyway regarding COVID and getting through a season with COVID. So maybe I'll phrase it this way: what are you most curious to find out about getting through a college basketball season with COVID?
I guess the one thing that's probably struck in my mind the most in the last week is we haven't talked much about officiating, which is kind of a big deal to the games. It's curious to me that we've had a lot of conversations about testing and contact tracing and quarantine and isolations and postponements, limited number of games, how many players you have to actually be able to play a game. And again, if we can have 12 guys each or 5, doesn't matter. If we don't have officials, the games don't happen. So that's probably the thing that I'm most curious to find out is what's the plan there. As many of you officials sometimes, for the most part, they're all independent contractors. So they get to officiate whenever and wherever they want. And a guy could easily be in Dallas today and in Fayetteville tomorrow and in Memphis on Saturday, right? And what's the protocol there? They're coming in contact with a lot of people. They're probably traveling by planes. They're probably eating in restaurants, staying in hotels, So it's probably the thing I'm most curious about, just because there hasn't been a whole lot of dialogue at this point.
Yeah. Real quick follow-up, since you made a point that I hadn't considered. Football established kind of a baseline with regard to numbers. It took a while, but they finally did it by conference, I think. What they need in terms of fielding a team. Where's college basketball on that? Has there been any suggestions to that regard?
I don't know that this has been established. Just speaking what I've heard so far. Some people just say you need 5, right? You have to have 5 guys. I don't know if that's really realistic. I tried to get to a Big 12 season 2 years ago with 6, didn't work out so well. I would say 7 would be a minimum number, right? Gives you 2 subs, but probably more comfortably 8. The problem is you can't have the number so high that it incentivizes people to play, have gamesmanship and,
right.
Maybe I'm supposed to go to Waco, and I can say this because I've joked with Scott Drew about this. He's going to have the number 1 team in the country going into the year. I'll mysteriously have, just 1 short of the number before I got to go down to Waco this year. And so you don't want those things happening. You want people to. The most important thing is we have the season and give the kids an opportunity to play. Obviously, do it safely, and then give these kids an opportunity to do what we didn't do last year, which was have an NCAA tournament at the end. And to do that, you got to play as many of these games as possible. So I don't know if there's been any definite, but those conversations are happening at this point.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Cody Nagel, you are up.
Hey, Mike, thanks for taking some time today.
No problem.
I guess I'm kind of curious, how do you go about recruiting for this 2021 class? Obviously, it's a lot different than it was a year ago for a number of reasons, but do you change your overall approach this time around?
Yeah, I have. I'm really aggressive recruiting personally, and losing out on the opportunity to be out and meet people and evaluate guys face to face has really challenged me in two ways. One, on whether I was going to be willing to change my approach. And I haven't convinced myself that that's good for me yet. The other part of it is not to get impatient, right? And not panic, because there's a lot of good players, certainly around the country, but everywhere, right? And so you don't want to get into a situation where you panic and you make a mistake, because there's one thing to miss out on a good player, right? That really doesn't hurt you as much as people think. What hurts you much more is taking a player who's not necessarily good enough. And so, especially if it's a younger guy and now you got him in your program. Not that every kid's got to be the best, but you don't want to have scholarships used up on guys who can't translate to what you're doing. So I've tried to be really, really patient, and we've tried to still do as much as we can, virtually. But it's been hard on me just because I love being involved in that process day to day. And it's really helped us put together the classes that we've put together the last couple of years. And it'll probably reflect that we probably won't sign a bunch of guys early, if any, to be honest. And I'm okay with that. I want to make sure we get the right guys in here at the end of the day.
All right, thank you.
Chase, go for it.
Hey, Coach, how are you?
Hey, Chase, how are you?
Good. So you've been here now 3 years. This will be season 4 for you. Can you talk about the journey you've had as a head coach here, specifically with the struggles you've had in regards with the FBI investigation almost immediately when you got here, and all that stuff, and how that's made you a better coach as we head into year 4?
I guess we'll find out if it's made me a better coach when I start coaching. Any ghostwriters out there, let me know. I got a couple of books I think I can get done here. But nah, what I've done is, and COVID's helped me with this because it's allowed me to step back and evaluate a lot of this stuff, is at one point I was starting to get a little frustrated that things just weren't turning at the rate that I wanted them to. And I stepped back, and what I've done is I've relied back on my faith. There's a reason that this has all happened. I don't know why. I stopped questioning God about 3 years ago. When I went to Nacogdoches, and I don't want to bore you guys with all the details, I was wondering what I was doing. I wasn't totally sure. I didn't know where it was, first of all, so that didn't help. But I go through 3 years there, and I don't get the head coaching job, and I'm really questioning. Like, I moved all the way across the country, brought my wife. We had a son at the time. Now we've got a daughter, and in my mind, this is why. And when it didn't happen, you really kind of get disappointed. Well, obviously, I became a head coach a year later at a Big 12 school, unexpectedly, all right, to be mild. And so for me, I always reflect back on that. I'm not going to know all the answers right now. What I'm going to try to do as much as I can is enjoy the process, be thankful for the people I get to meet, and try to have as much of a positive impact on those people as I can. And everything else, there'll be a time to reflect. But right now, my focus is going to be giving these guys the best 2 hours that I'm capable of giving them when practice starts.
Nice. Can you talk about the importance of Cade Cunningham on the roster and how that feels as like a culmination of the work that you've done over the past 3 years leading up to this year?
Yeah, I mean, it really speaks to him. It's not, by any means, it's not about me. It's about him, having courage. It was a pretty courageous thing for him to decide. And people may say, well, his brother's there, it's easy. No, I actually told him I don't want him to come here because of his brother. And I told him, you can ask him this. If he's coming here only for his brother, then I don't want to coach him because I need to coach him if he's here. I need to treat him just like I would Isaac Likely or Caleb Boone. I need to challenge him. And I wasn't going to be able to do that if there was a misunderstanding of what the mission is. So the credit goes to him for buying in and believing enough in himself that he didn't have to pick a traditional blue blood powerhouse type program, that he could go walk his own path and still have all the success that he would have had anywhere else. And so I'm proud of him for doing that. I'm thankful that he's here, but I'm also responsible now for helping him achieve the goals that we talked about when he decided to come here.
Cool. Finally, last question. What's your message to the players going into this season? You know, when you got here, it was let's work. If I remember correctly, last year it was foundation laid. What's the message to the players this year with the season coming up, with Cade Cunningham and company coming in?
It's always let's work. That's never changed, never will, not as long as I'm here. That goes for everybody in our program. It obviously starts with me. I've got to set the tone. But, you know, our assistant coaches, our support staff, that's why I'm thankful for Courtney Bay. She embraces that. Stephen Howard embraces that. Our strength and conditioning coach, my wife, when we asked to meet, I mean, everyone a part of our program has to embrace that. And then, right, for us to have the success that we think the program can have, everybody who loves Oklahoma State basketball has to embrace that. And when we are able to have fans, we need as many that we're able to have show up. That's a part of their responsibility to helping us have success. We need our former players and alumni to support the kids. We need our administration to continue to provide the resources that we need. So that hasn't changed. That won't change. The only thing that changes from year to year is some of the faces that are inside those jerseys. And this year we got a nice group of newcomers that I'm excited to coach. But that core message is still the same as it was on March 20, whatever it was, 2017.
Awesome. Thanks, Coach.
Ryan Breeden, go for it.
Hey, Mike. So when we talked to Cade earlier, I asked him about his commitment process, like more specifically the days leading up to his announcement and the day of his announcement, and he like really went in depth and told us that story. Can you tell that story from your perspective?
So let's see. I did have some inside baseball going through his recruitment process because his brother was here, right? I didn't want that to be the reason he came, but I did have all the information. We were able to help facilitate the scheduling of the visits and knew that he was going to sign early, right? So that helped me plan how I was going to go about his recruitment in the fall of last year. And you get 7 opportunities to get in front of a kid until he signs. Now, if you go through all 7 in the fall and he doesn't sign in the fall, you're screwed because you got to try to recruit him the rest of the year without being able to see him. But again, inside baseball, I knew he was signing early, so I used all 7. And the last time I went down there, I went by myself. I believe it was a Sunday evening, and maybe the Cowboys were playing. It's his football team. So we got a little rivalry there, even though my Giants, as close as we came, was still the worst team in football right now, including my dad's Jets somehow. But I remember just getting with him and him really kind of saying, hey, Coach, I think I know what I want to do, and I'm ready to go public with it. But, you know, there's more to it. There's a process to getting this stuff out. There's a video that's got to be made. There's graphics that have to be made. I don't get into all that stuff. But, you know, I kind of, once I get the information, I trust their word and let them take it from there. But, you know, he was awesome. I remember everything about his recruitment, to be honest, because I was in it every day with him.
Can you talk about the buzz that kind of was around campus and around the program, like the day when he announced that he was committing and what that was like for you?
Yeah, actually, it's funny because it was actually the opening day of the season last year. So it was a Tuesday. We were practicing, and I knew he was going to do it. I just didn't know what time it was going to happen. But I knew the video was done. I knew it all was ready, and I actually saw a little sneak preview of it. But he wanted to announce it basically in congruence with basketball season starting, like the games actually being played. And so that's what he did. And so I made sure that I left the gym and campus to go home. So I was home with my son. This is fun. This is funny because my son loves basketball. He thinks he wants to be a basketball coach, and there's no way I'm going to let him, right? But I tell him, because I was telling him about recruiting Cade, and he loves watching YouTube videos of guys playing. And, I think I may have it still on my phone. I'll share it with you guys one day. But I tell him, hey, Cade's coming. He's going to announce today. And he literally, I've never seen my son more excited. And so it was a pretty awesome moment to share with him. And I actually showed Cade the video since then, and he felt pretty good about it, though.
That's awesome. And then final question, what's it been like now having him here and knowing that like that whole process paid off and he's here now?
It's great. I mean, you know, the thing that's in my mind, one of the best attributes of Cade is that he's a great teammate. And it would be easy for him not to be, right? But that's just not who he is. He's a great teammate. His teammates enjoy being around him. He treats everybody he comes into contact with respect. And so when you have a guy with that type of talent who embraces being a part of the program, being one of the guys, not wanting anything extra done, you know, he didn't want to live on his own in some place away from campus. He wanted to live with his teammates. He wants to eat with his teammates. He wants to hang out with those guys. It makes it easier for everyone else, not necessarily to fall in line, but it makes it harder for them to challenge some things. You know, when you watch his practice, you're going to see Cade working out with Caleb and Bernard, and he's going to be inside. Like he's going to do whatever we ask for our team to have success. And so that's the thing I've enjoyed the most is his coachability and his ability to be a great teammate.
Thank you, Coach.
Danielle hasn't got to get a question in. Danielle, you go for it.
Hey, Coach. First off, thanks for doing this. Good to see you again. And for what it's worth, I feel your pain on the NFL level as a lifelong Browns fan. So, but for basketball, you kind of just mentioned how Cade's been buying in. I did want to ask you just how much does it mean to you going into a season where with the NCAA sanctions, there's just so many unknowns between that and COVID and everything, but how much does it mean to you as a coach to not only see the work that you're putting in, start paying off, but also those guys continuing to buy in, believe in you, believe in this program, and stick with you amid all of this?
It means a lot. There are a lot of ways to do this job. Whether it's recruiting or coaching or whatever. And, our philosophy has been to do the hard work every day and to not cut corners or try to find a easier way to success. Is to embrace the challenges along the way and continue to pour into the kids. Probably my most gratifying moments as a coach is when I hear from my players' parents about how much their kids are enjoying being here and being coached. And that's ultimately, for me, validation. I want to beat everybody we play. I want to win a national championship. I think that's obvious. I want to win every game. But I want to be respected by these kids and their parents more than I want to win any game at all. And because I feel like we're doing that and we have the right kids, the success is going to come on the court as well. And I feel really good about that. I don't sleep. I tell people all the time, I don't sleep much, but I do like to enjoy when I sleep. And so I sleep well because I feel like we do things the right way. I don't have any second guesses on how we treat people or how the kids are being treated or that we're creating an environment that they don't like. These kids love being here, as evidenced by the fact that many of them could have chose not to be here with very little penalty. And so the opportunity to be able to coach them every day, to have our program continue to take steps forward, that's the ultimate validation for me.
And a quick follow-up, Robert mentioned that I kind of started the questions. He's been following up with them just about you as a person, not just as a coach. But for you, you talked about, not having that competitiveness overshadow the person you are. At what point maybe in your career did you realize that was more, that is your identity first before coach, I guess, being a great person and role model? And, was there something that impacted that? Was there a switch for you to realize that is what is more important and that's who you are, person first, coach second?
No, I don't know if I ever thought about coaching in any other way, to be perfectly honest. Now, I've seen people coach other ways, but I don't know if I've ever thought about it any other way. And I have to give credit to my literally the first coaches that ever coached me. A guy named Kenny Pretlow literally would pick me up from my house at 6:30 in the morning and throw me in a car and take me to a gym and show me how to play basketball. My high school coach, both of my college coaches, they always cared about who I was and what I was going to become as an adult, as a husband and father. They encouraged me to coach, but I always knew if that's what it was about for them, if they thought that I could do it, then I need to honor that by doing this thing in a way that would make them proud. And hopefully I'm doing that.
Thank you.
Marshall Scott, go for it.
Hey, Coach, nice to see you again. Just kind of building off of Cody's question about recruiting in the 2021 cycle, is this really going to kind of showcase coaches' like eyes for talent? Because usually, there's the Adidas circuit, there's the Nike circuit, everybody's kind of centralized, and you don't necessarily have that this year. Because is that going to kind of, I don't know if expose is the right word, but is that going to kind of show how good coaches' eyes are when coming to this stuff?
Yeah, maybe a little bit of a stretch. This thing's created so many challenges because I don't think it's about just talent, right? It's about fit as much as it is about talent. And you can be fooled, right? I mean, a highlight tape can give you some things that don't translate to success in a college basketball game. So I just think it's about being as thorough as you can. I think that's going to be the thing that exposes how thorough people are as they go through this process. And it's really why, I was getting a little anxious probably about a month ago and finally kind of talking to my staff had to step back and say, there's a lot of good players out there. We just got to make sure we get the right ones, not a particular one. And if we get the right ones, we'll be fine. If we don't get the right ones, then we won't.
Gotcha. And then this is a question I get all the time, so I'm sure you get it just as much. Is there any update on the appeal process?
No, not at this point. It's not moving as fast as I think people thought it was and thought it would initially. But I don't know if we have any more clarity on the finality of it at this point. So as soon as we know more information, we'll pass it along.
Kind of pairing with that, the NCAA is obviously voting to see if this year counts towards eligibility or not. Do you have any idea how that would factor in with the scholarship sanctions that you guys have?
It's a great question. I have no idea. Hadn't really even considered it until yesterday. It came up in a meeting because we knew that the council was considering it yesterday and maybe going to vote on it today. How does that affect whatever the outcome of our appeal is? And again, it's one of those things way out of our control. We'll just focus on trying to recruit the guys we can. And if we have guys who want to come back for an additional year, I guess we only have two guys who could fall into that category in terms of exhausted eligibility, will be Farron and Bryce.
And then you mentioned the scouts that are anticipated to be watching today's practice. They're obviously, front and center is going to be Cade, but how beneficial is this year just in general for guys like Ice, who's kind of a fringe draft pick guy, for guys like Caleb, who you mentioned you think can make the NBA, for guys like Matthew Alexander? How beneficial can that be for these guys to kind of get in front of those scouts?
Yeah, so my correspondents, after we put out the information about our stream, they wanted the link. Several of them reached out and they're curious about some of those younger guys. Obviously, everybody knows Cade, but they've heard about these other guys, and so it's a great opportunity for these guys, if handled right, to take advantage of the opportunity to be seen more. Which again, you'll find out if they're prospects or suspects.
How many times do you anticipate restarting the shell drill today? I know that was the big thing last year.
Yeah, I mean that's the only thing that may adjust because of this camera is I don't want our fans to lose interest. But the treadmill will be running today.
Okay. Thank you.
Getting down to the last few questions, guys. We've got to get Coach to the practice court, but Robert Allen, you go for it.
Yeah, Coach, Marshall kind of asked my question, how you might navigate the possibility of making decisions on whether you wanted to keep guys that wanted to stay versus recruit new guys. And that's probably not something you can answer right now, would be my guess.
Yeah, and I'm not quite entirely sure if that's necessarily a one or the other. I think the way the rules written in the fall sports is they don't count towards your.
No, it's a waiver. You're right.
So, and I'm not sure that it would even be a conversation if both parties wanted to have the kid come back, that it would affect the recruiting side of things.
Okay, thank you.
I think to Marshall's question is, how does it affect the scholarship reduction?
The scholarship, right.
Which is probably something I need to find out as soon as they want to tell me.
Thank you.
Grant Ramirez, go for it.
Hey, Mike. Cade being a 6'8" point guard is obviously a unique thing for you to have. Can cause mismatches on offense. Defense, he could realistically defend 1 through 4. Can you talk about how his size will kind of just impact how versatile you guys can be on both sides of the ball, just from a lineup perspective?
Yeah, it's interesting. I told you when you watch practice today, when we go to split up and you see guards on one end and post players on the other. He's going to be with our post players. He's gotten a lot of work with our guards, and obviously we have a lot more guards anyway, so it helps kind of with balance. But we want to develop his skill set as a post-up guy. I mean, most of the time, the guys guarding him are going to be guards, and if they're not 6'8", they won't be 6'9", so they'll be smaller, and we're gonna want him inside as much as possible. But it also gives us the ability to be versatile on the defensive end, because him and Isaac both can guard all the way to a 4 comfortably, and some 5s if teams are playing just a stretch 5. So yeah, it gives us a lot of versatility, because a lineup of those two with Farron and Chris, for instance, gives you 2 really good floor spacers, shot makers, and 2 really good ball handle decision-making players. And then you got to, whether it be Matthew or Caleb or somebody at the 5, you got a pretty good group of interchangeable parts.
And you touched on him and Ice as a backcourt defensively. How good do you think that they could be over the season?
I haven't seen a lot of other teams, so I don't want to compare it to somebody else. But in terms of the teams that I've coached, this will be as good a defensive backcourt as I've coached in my career. I've coached some pretty good defensive teams. I'm not sure I would put them in the category of the senior backcourt that I played with defensively. They're much better offensively, but I still take pride in my defense out there. I tell our guys, you'll hear me screaming first team when you see me guarding people out there today. I got the highest defensive efficiency rating on our roster, just so you know. So that's on record.
Okay.
And I'm talking about today, not 2004.
All right, thanks, Coach.
Dave Hunziker, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I'll be quick, Coach. Do you have any inkling from the conference as far as how the schedule in conference play might be structured, and what concerns do you have or things you think have to be taken into account when they put that together?
Yeah, so I think structurally the only changes that I know of at this point is that we're all going to play 2 games in December. I think everybody's going to play 2 games in December when everybody's kind of moved around what their final schedule is and stuff like that. And what that done essentially is open up the final week, which was normally the final week of the regular season, for makeup games if necessary. But as far as I understand, that's the only change that's been made at this point.
And just one quick follow-up is there's obviously a lot that goes into playing with COVID and the need for guys to stay disciplined. But so how do you balance, it's a long season, the need to make sure the guys have fun, at the same time stay disciplined in areas they're probably not accustomed to being disciplined in? I mean, how do you plan on managing all that?
Yeah, I mean, just education, setting a good example. We try to tell these guys to protect our bubble, so to speak, right? Which means as much as we can, just spend time with the guys that are in our group. And even if you want to go grab the bite to eat, don't do it with, not that we don't want them interacting with other students on campus, but, be smart about the crowds you're in, the places you go, the people are there. Because the truth is, we don't assume anybody's in bad shape. We just don't know. And what's at stake for us and what we could lose taking those chances and going out in public venues isn't worth it. And it goes counter to what they say they want to do. And so I think the guys are all committed to not going out and spending as much time, just with each other as we possibly can. And we can go out to eat together. We need to go and be with just, 3 or 4 of us, not go to a random house party on campus. We can't just go to Joe's with some of our buddies. We can't go hang out, just can't do those things. And obviously they got to continue to practice the hygiene, wear their mask and those type of things.
Awesome. Thank you, Coach.
No problem.
Sadeep, finish it off for us.
How you doing, Coach?
What's up, buddy? How are you?
I'm doing well. So I was just wondering, you kind of mentioned the youth and how that's something you're going to have to deal with in the next this season. How much harder does it make it that you have a shortened non-conference schedule? You go into Big 12 play faster?
I haven't given much thought to that, only because it's one of those things out of our control, right? I mean, one thing on the one hand, you kind of stay away from the thought that some of the games early don't matter. Well, we're going to play a Big 12 game in the first month of the season. So we better be getting ourselves ready and dialed in practice and understanding the responsibility of resting the night before games and understanding the scout report and things of that nature. So I haven't given much thought to it. And it's, again, one of those things out of our control we won't focus a whole lot of attention on.
And how have you kind of seen Farron step up as a leader now? Obviously, he's one of the oldest guys on the team, and the guy who's trying to make his name here.
Yeah, so Farron's more of a by-example guy. He's got to continue to get to know these guys. A lot of them are 4 or 5 years younger than he is. They don't relate to all the same things. His interest level is different in certain areas. But on the court, he does a great job. He works really hard. He's really, really coachable. And he tries to help as much as he can when he knows what to say.